Is everybody going to have to
No,
agree to be?
no, they don't have to all agree. Because it's just that's why I muted everybody and hit everyone. So
Okay.
I think that what would happen is if they didn't agree and they somehow came on screen and they just wouldn't show up or something like that. No, it should record just fine. All right. So this is our official begin of the mobile color webinar. Again, for those of you who maybe just joined the room, I'm Jim Raffle, and I'm joined by...
I'm Shelby Sapusik, and we're from Colorcasters.
We are, and it's really hard not to say this is the Jim and Shelby Show, all things print podcast.
It's not the podcast.
We'll get to that though. We will talk about that as we get into the slides. So we have a few slides. They are not the core of this presentation. The core of this presentation is some live demonstrations. Let me see if I can successfully share those slides. We literally tested everything. Somehow I don't think I shared the right screen.
You didn't.
Oh, I shared the iPad, didn't I? No, I shared this. Oh, great. Now things aren't working.
You know, we got online half an hour early to test everything.
So you're not seeing.
Now we're good.
Oh, you're seeing it?
Now I am.
Well, that's weird. I'm not seeing it. Okay. Doesn't have a big green square around it. Okay. Anyway. All right. So this is the mobile color webinar. We're going to do demos and evaluations of several color verification and evaluation applications. We've done a brief introduction. Maybe Shelby should do all the talking. So we are Colorcasters. I'm again Jim and Shelby. We do color management consulting and training. We actually found all of these tools and created some of this software as a direct result of our color management training and consulting work. My background, real briefly, I've been in the printing industry just about forever. I went to RIT more than 30 years ago, and almost 40 years ago, and have a degree in printing management, have worked in conventional offset, and then moved into software development, digital inkjet in the last 20, 25 years. And this is where I am now. Shelby, you want to do a brief introduction of yourself?
I can. I'm Shelby Sapusik, and I started out in the newspaper industry doing graphic design work, production work. I worked myself up to editorship at some point, and newspapers kind of tanked out on me. Everybody's familiar with that whole story. So I went out on my own, and during that process, I met Jim. And at the time, he had a software technology company for color verification called Color Metrics that still exists, although we mostly work under Colorcasters now, which together we formed about 7 years ago.
That's right.
Because we saw that there was more of a need for education and training in the industry. So while we've gone, I'll admit Tanessa here, while we've gone more into education, there's obviously still need for software in color evaluation and verification, and that's why one of the reasons we're doing this mobile color webinar today.
All right, fantastic. Let's jump in a little further here. So what we're going to do as we work through this is we are going to share some information about the Nix instruments, and I've got a tabletop camera over here, so I'll be able to actually show you these instruments. Then we're going to work through our SpeckCheck app. That's the app that we had developed over the last 3 or 4 years. We're going to go through Seeing Color app, which happens to be developed by the same party who developed our SpeckCheck app for us. The Nix Toolkit, which actually comes with any of the Nix products or is available. It's actually a free download, but it works with any of the Nix products. It has a little more functionality depending on what instrument you have. Talk about some future training opportunities if you like some of what you hear us talking about today, and then where you can buy a Nix if you don't have one, or if you maybe bought a Mini 2 and what we show you today makes you want to upgrade. We'll talk about where you can get the next best thing. All right, so what we're going to talk about mainly today are the Nix Mini 2. I don't have a 3 available, so the 2 and the 3 are very similar. They appear the same, they function the same. The 3 has some new technology in it that quote unquote makes it more reliable, more accurate. I've been doing some testing with the the current 2, just playing around getting ready for this. And honestly, the 2 is a pretty decent instrument other than measuring something like a really dense black, and people know that. And then there's the Spectro L, which is a new entry. I'm going to show you that. It's got a very attractive price point. And then there is the Spectro 2, which is my favorite instrument if I'm gonna pick favorites. Just so you understand the difference between the instruments before I start showing them to you. The Mini 3 is actually a colorimeter, and that means that it measures in 3 areas across the human visual spectrum, just like this graph at the top of the page is showing. So it's got the ability to measure a red part of the spectrum, a green part, and a blue part, just like our eyes. So it sees color in a way very similar to our eyes. It is limiting, and it can be fooled because it's only looking at color in those three bands. The Spectro L measures in many more. I think it's 10 or 12. And then you can see that when you get down to the Spectro 2, it measures in, I think, 32 bands or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers, but you can see, relatively speaking, you get much more precise measurement across the human visual spectrum as you increase in both physical size of the instrument and cost. As some of you know, if you bought a Mini 2, or they're showing the 3, or like the 3, I think is around $100 or $110, something like that. And there are, for anyone who might still need them, we've got a few Mini 2s left, and I'm going to give you a special price at the end. But the Mini 2 or the Mini 3 is, we've got the Mini 2s at I think $69 right now shipped. Mini 3, you can probably go on Amazon now and buy it for 100 or 110 bucks. The Spectro L, I think we're selling at $479, I think is the list price. The Spectro 2 is $999. So that probably explains some of the price difference. The other things that, it goes through some of the real obvious things here, the size and the weight of these. So the L and the 2 are pretty much the same size, and you'll see that in a minute. The other nice thing about this slide is it tells you what it's good for, right? Painters and contractors, interior, a little bit for graphic designers. When you get over here, you get into spectral functionality, color quality, right? Graphic arts industry. So this is really the instrument that they built for anyone who's in inkjet or inkjet production. They built this instrument for you because this one is still kind of expensive for a lot of smaller sign shops. But here, you're under $500 and you're getting a full-blown, really functional spectrophotometer. I've been playing around with that one a lot. If you need a smaller aperture, if we have any people on in the packaging or traditional printing markets, they do have a 2mm aperture available for the Spectro 2, so that makes it more useful in traditional graphic arts. And it also has its own calibration plaque and an ISO certification certificate. So it's got some additional benefits that you get from that. So what I'm going to try to do, always a high wire act.
I just put a note in the chat, so if you see that light up, that's where you can ask any questions. But first, I'm going to ask a question to the group while Jim is getting set up. How many of you have a Nix device? Just curious. If you do, let me know.
All right. I'm going to change my view around, hoping that it may be. There we go. Nope. But it doesn't hear me, so how do I make myself? How do I pin me? There we go.
Dave has multiple Nix devices for different uses. Ron has a Nix Mini 2, another Nix Mini 2, Benham and Nix Mini 2. Nix Mini 2 have a variable device, another Nix Mini 2. A lot of people have Nix Mini 2s.
Maybe they bought them from us.
I don't know. I'm not going to ask.
All right, Shelby, can you turn off your video just so I make sure we get
I
them?
sure can.
I know you love video, but all right. So this is my own little personal carrying case, and here's the reveal. Here's all 3 instruments all together. Pull them all out here. So I'll get this case out of the way. Kind of explain some of what you get. So you can see that the Mini 2 is pretty small, and the Spectro L is quite a bit bigger. And then here's the Spectro 2. Mine's one of, I think mine says prototype on it. It normally says Spectro 2 down at the bottom. This is the white calibration plaque that you would get only with the Spectro 2. And that's what makes it certifiable back to an ANSI standard. So that's one of the big differences there. Let me get these guys all out of the way for a minute. you buy a Mini 2, I saw a lot of Mini 2s. You've already seen this. So this is the Mini 2 packaging. It's just a plastic case. It does come with both the lanyard, which you've seen here, and then it also comes with a charging cable, a little quick start guide. So that's the Mini 2 case. When you get into the Spectro L, you can see you've got a nice padded case it would come with. Power cable, lanyards in there. I think it has like a white reference guide. The only purpose for the white reference guide, just so everybody knows, you would never use this. The only reason you would use the white reference is if you're having problems with the instrument. Nix Sensors would advise you to take a measurement of that and work you through it on a tech support call to determine whether or not your instrument needs some kind of service. If you go all the way up to the Spectro 2, you're going to get a little baby. It's not, I don't think it's Pelican by brand, but you're going to get a little plastic Pelican style case. This thing is, really built. It's got a lot of foam. Instrument goes in here. Comes like a little cleaning kit. Your calibration plaque can go in here. It's really just nice because it is a precision instrument. And I know some of my clients who have sold it to, they just use it as a storage facility for the instrument so it doesn't get lost. I mean, because even though it's much bigger than a Mini 2, it's relatively small. And so they have a kind of a system where it always goes back in the case whenever you're done using it, and whoever needs it next can find it very quickly. Or you can do what I did and create your own case, which kind of makes it easier to travel with. Some other things we're going to do today, and I'm just going to show these things now so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth between different kind of cameras. When we show you the SpeckCheck app, which comes up next, this is the built-in and only target that the SpeckCheck app can measure for color verification. And I'll show you how you can actually print that right out of the app or get access to it. I'm going to be measuring this. So when you see me measuring, this is what I'm going to actually be measuring. When I do some spot color work with both SpeckCheck and Seeing Color, as well as Nix Toolkit, I will probably be measuring color samples up here on this test print. In some cases, I might be comparing them to a Pantone guide. I've got the uncoded formula guide right now. It doesn't really matter what for the purposes of what we're doing. So the instruments are all the same in that there are no buttons on the instrument. The measurements are all achieved through software, and you will see that again when I start sharing my iPad mini, or it's not a mini, my iPad Air. So you don't really press anything on the instrument. You really position the instrument over what it is you want to measure, and then you instruct your software to take the measurement. That's true across all three of the instruments that I've got here. They all charge through small ports. It's the USB-C on the Spectro and the L. It's the old connector on the Mini 2. I'm not sure what's on a Mini 3. I'm thinking they maybe went to USB-C. Shelby, anything else I should show here before I stop sharing this camera?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay. Go back to me. This one? I don't know. Yeah, there we go. All right. And if you want to jump back in now, you could. So with that, what we are going to do next, stay on task here.
I'm going to keep myself off video so you can show your screen.
There we go. So what we're going to start with is our SpeckCheck app. And what SpeckCheck is really designed for is four-color process color verification, as well as spot color verifications. And so let me just, we're going to kind of jump in. I'm going to show you all the apps we're going to show you, and then show you all the apps so I don't have to bounce back.
Yeah, that might be better so you're not going back and forth.
Yeah. Seeing Color is designed for doing ICC profile verification and then spot color in and out of gamut comparisons. There's a lot more to it, and I'll try and show you as much as I can without getting way down in the weeds. But here, for example, it's showing you a profile, a printer profile, and then all 2,000 some Pantone colors compared against that profile. So you can see which ones are in gamut and out of gamut. That's the basics of it. The Nix Toolkit is a really versatile toolkit. If you need to do color library comparisons, I know we've got some sign people and some vehicle wrap people. All the paint libraries, not all, but most of the major paint libraries are available for free download. Some of them I think you have to pay for. And I'll show you how you can take a measurement and compare it to any of the paint libraries out there. They can do some cool spot color evaluations, both single measurements and comparative, again, depending on the instrument you have. I'm going to show it with the Spectro 2 or the L, whichever one I'm hooked up to. And there you do get the comparative functionality. You can't do the comparison with just a Mini because the Mini doesn't collect enough data. And then it's also a great diagnostic tool if you're having trouble with your device. Don't trust third-party apps. Use their app to make sure that you're connecting and everything's working okay. And that's for later. So let's stop sharing this. Let's go back and share. Let me get my iPad running. There we go. There we go. Okay. I was like, where is it? All right. You are seeing my iPad, correct, Shelby?
Correct.
All right. Let's see. So let's start with SpeckCheck. Oh, I'm going to use my trackpad on my iPad so that you guys can hopefully see where I'm tapping when I'm tapping now. Okay, so you get a list of all your instruments. We have inventory here in this house, so there's a whole bunch. Fortunately, the Mini 2s are far enough away in the basement that they don't all show up. But the Spectro 2s do have a lot of juice in them, and there's the one I have on my desk, which is probably weird. It should be showing up, and it's not, because I don't think it's this one right here. But what you do is you pick the device you want to connect to, and you just tap to connect. So I'm picking the Spectro L, and that tells you it's connected. So you have to acknowledge that. And then we have a couple choices. We can do color verification. This is that target that I was showing you earlier. And so you just position as I was talking about, and then you click right on the app. So if this was your iPhone or your iPad, and again, this particular app only works on iOS devices, but if it was your iPhone or your iPad, you would be tapping the screen. I happen to have an external keyboard for my iPad, so I have a little trackpad, which is helpful because you can see where I'm tapping. Otherwise, sometimes I've done these demos and people are like, how are you getting it to measure? I'm basically just tapping on, these are really buttons, well, not really, these are buttons. So I'm just tapping on the appropriate button. I allow it to take the measurement, I move, and then I measure again. On the Spectro L and the Spectro 2, the top of the device actually lights up so you can tell something's happening. On the Mini 2, you really have to watch your app for the feedback. Just about done here. I'm in the second row now. Fairly fast process. I think it's under 2 minutes. I've timed it more than once. The nice thing about, for anyone doing wide and grand format, if you think about any maybe the rigid substrates you're doing on flatbed UV devices or hybrid devices, you don't have to cut your sample out to do anything. You can just print on the edge of an old piece or on the piece you're about to begin working on. All right, then we go into
Jim,
evaluate.
it says, what are you pointing your device at? We can't see what you're pointing at. So he's measuring the target that he showed us before, the one that had spec. Do you have a sample of that you could hold up, Jim?
This guy.
He's measuring that target. So on those squares, if you can see them, the far left is substrate, and then it goes through CMYK, RGB, and then percentages of black that you can see there, the 25, 50, and 75. And then the other grays are recipes of cyan, magenta, and yellow to make those grays. Another question we have is, I have a Measure Color mobile instrument as well. Is the Nix Mini 2 better, worse, or comparable? What are your thoughts on that, Jim? They're both colorimeters.
If you're comparing it to the little Measure Color, I would prefer the Mini 2 or the Mini 3 over that device. Yeah, I think it's a more precise measurement. Let me get back into this though, so we don't lose track. Some of those we can catch at the end. The first thing you always want to do, especially if you're working in wide and grand format, is you want to adapt to the white point of what you just measured. And again, that's the kinds of things we train on in our advanced color management classes. And then I have to pick what I'm comparing against. So in this case, I went in and I picked something called CRPC6. For those of you who are color savvy, that is essentially the Grackle profile. So if you've heard of Grackle or Swap, this is now comparing what I have to Grackle, and it's still out of spec. I mean, you're probably wondering what's out of spec because everything is green here. I'm actually glad something is out of spec, because that way I can explain what's going on. We're comparing to the G7 print condition. And if we go down here to the 3-color grays, we're out just a tiny, tiny bit on our 3-color gray. We're really just less than a half delta E out of spec. In all honesty, for production quality work for most people, this would be a really good result. This sample is probably just aged. I've had this sample a long time. It's probably aged over time. I know at times when I measure this sample, it's in spec. I have noticed lately it's not. It's been exposed to too much light. It might be scratched. There might be fingerprints on it. It's just enough that it's no longer in spec. But it's also not all that far out of spec. We have other tools for people who do profiling. You can go look at your 2-dimensional. This would, some people think of this as a spider graph. There's no spiders because of the limited amount of data we're collecting. But we can see where our CMYK and RGB primaries fall in relation to the profile that we're comparing against. And we can do that same thing in 3 dimensions, because color actually occurs in 3 dimensions, not in 2. So you can see, and if I hit the word sample, then my samples, and I can see what it's comparing to. And so let's see, we've got pretty good gray balance, but for some reason, we're a little far out on one of those. We have the ability to save these, so that would be here. I could just click save, and then I could save it to my drive, my iCloud drive. I'll show you how that works. The way that would work is I can come in and I could say import, and I can go to my iCloud. We do some training at 3M from time to time. It's just going to import the measurements which I saved on a previous job site. I click evaluate, and then here you can see right away we're in spec with that particular set of data. That's why you save the data, by the way. When I keep remeasuring the same physical sample, it does change over time. And we really want to know if this was in spec when we made it, not a year from now. I mean, there's reasons to also check a year from now, but usually most people are using this tool for immediate verification while they're sitting there, you know, after they've taken that measurement. All right. I mentioned that, you know, someone was asking what we were measuring. If you click on this target button, what you can do is you can get that target that I was holding up. You can get this as a TIFF or a PDF right out of the app. So you could click on PDF and you could text it to Shelby.
There's no need.
Yeah, I just did.
Thanks.
I just heard your phone. All right.
Wasn't my phone. Mine's turned off.
Oh, maybe it was the outbound. I also just noticed that my iPad has a really, it says it's 9:41. I don't know where it's 9:41 a.m. and why my iPad thinks it's 9:41 a.m. But anyway, on Tuesday.
It's off on minutes as well as the hour.
And it's Tuesday, January 9th, apparently. So I probably should look into that.
Maybe, maybe.
Um, the other function inside of color casters is the library. And so library allows you to work with a library, multiple libraries of colors, actually. Oh, I guess I only have one in here. I happen to have imported a Pantone library. This is old though. It would be version 4. So, back in the day, you used to be able to, if you had a Pantone book, you could use the Pantone app and you could export what they call a CXF, which is a file format of all the Pantone colors. You can't do that anymore. So this is actually, I can't share this with you, but my use of it is actually 100% legal because I had the book and I had the app and I only use it for my own use. So what happens here is that I can compare, if I measure my yellow. So again, I'm measuring this target right here. And I'm just going to put my Spectro L right on the yellow patch and I'm going to see what is it. And so the way I did that is I clicked to measure. I just went down here and I clicked right there. So it's going to measure again now. And it tells me that based on this library, this is pretty close to a Pantone 3945. It's an average match. It's a 2 delta E, which is, for anyone who knows colors, right on that edge of where you'd go. That's not so bad. Kind of a cool feature we have in here is there's the sRGB and the hex values, but the other thing I can do is I can open Shelby's profile. I don't know what Shelby's profile is, but I can open any ICC profile that I can get access to through my iCloud or wherever. And it tells me that with Shelby's profile, if I've used these CMYK build values in my RIP software, not in my design software, in my RIP software, I will get a good match. So something less than 2. The other thing I can do is I can create my own colors. So I could say plus, and I could just call this webinar yellow. Oh, if I could type. Save that. So as you might imagine, when it compares to webinar yellow, whoops. When it compares to webinar yellow, it has a delta E of 0. I would certainly hope so because it's comparing to itself. So that's really the basics of SpeckCheck. That's the 2 things it's generally used for. I'm going to disconnect here. The main function of verification is just that if you, for example, if you just bought a brand new printer, you can, even if you're not going to hire someone like Shelby and I to come in and build custom profiles, let's say you settle on a generic profile or one provided by the print manufacturer as being color that's good enough for what you're doing. What you can do is once you've made that decision, you print out this target right here, you measure it, and as you saw, I had the ability to save those measurements. So you could save those measurements 2 ways. You can save them as a file that you can recall later. You can also save them as your own in-house reference. So where I picked that CGATS file, CGAT6, you could pick, Jim's new printer and compare all future measurements to that. And if a year from now you're getting failures where you were getting passes, you can decide what you want to do to get your color back in spec. The other piece of it, library, is just a way to compare to known colors that you've already measured, or if you have a way to get access to a library in a format that we can import, you can import an entire library and do comparisons against that. All right, the second app we wanted to talk about today is Seeing Color. Seeing Color doesn't require it, but like I could just right now take a measurement. And first I have to tell it which Nix. We're going to use our Mini 2. Since I know a lot of you have Mini 2s. Now Nix is not, SpeckCheck is free currently, may not be forever, but it's currently free. Seeing Color, I believe Chris charges a few dollars for, $10 or $12, something less than that. And so once we're connected, if I just right away take a measurement, and remember let's measure green, sorry. I think I measured white. I think, yeah, let's try this again. There we go. I just measured this green right here, but there's nothing to compare it to right now. Use my finger to move that around. So it's just, this is that one I measured, which was kind of paper white while I picked the instrument up while I was measuring. So that's a nothing measurement. So what I can do is I can go into my layers up here on the upper right. I should, let me go back. I didn't use my finger. So in the upper right, there's this icon that looks like layers. And I can add a profile. Oh, darn, I don't have Shelby's profile. I'm going to compare to Grackle 2006. I'm going to make that profile a little transparent just so I can see it better. I'm going to use the relative format. And before I leave this, I'm going to show you that there's a lot of cool stuff under the hood in seeing color. So if you build profiles like I do, it's neat because you can go in and you can see there's like header information. It shows you the lab values. Well, I usually work in relative. It shows me the lab values of my CMYK, my overprints. It shows me the spider graphs, which are really useful. It shows me my curves. It shows me my gray points, all very important things if I'm building profiles. And if you're not, it's there and it's hidden. Same thing with my measurements. Here's that, I think this is the good one. Here's my green measurement. Again, there's not much here. It just shows me the hex. This should look familiar. We sometimes share development between us since he's developed for us as well. This is where I could import the entire Pantone library if I wanted to. That gets a little overbearing for this. You saw that image earlier, actually. That was where we had that. So I can just pinch and zoom, and I can see that my green is actually out of gamut. But in this case, that sort of means a good thing. It means my printer is capable of printing a gamut bigger than Grackle. And that means that if my customer wants Grackle, then I can probably do it. Right? And so if I measured a couple other colors, measure cyan, magenta, yellow, red, I can measure green, blue, and black. Remember, I said there's some issues with black on this instrument. So you can see the black measurement, which is down the, whoa, I could never do that again if I tried. There we go. The black, which is down here, you can see it's actually inside the Grackle gamut. It's probably really not. It's just an issue with the accuracy of the measurements from a colorimeter versus a spectrophotometer. And let me prove that. I don't know where my, oh, there's my Spectro too. So I'm just going to measure this black with Spectro 2. Forced calibration. But
Did you show them the calibration plaques
I
that
did.
came?
I held it up. Yep, I held it up.
Yep.
I'm just going to click on this calibrate button up here. It verifies my serial number, which is on the calibration plaque as well.
This, yeah, it takes very little time.
So you can see it did position that measurement was quite a bit below that first block measurement. So it's, and actually inkjet blacks are, that's one of the areas where we do fall short of traditional offset printing typically. So that's, I'm not surprised by any of the data that we're seeing here, but that's essentially what you can do with seeing color. I mean, it's, you can have a lot of fun with it. You can, you know, you can change the background color. You can turn on and off Take the signposts on and off. You could actually load a second profile. I'm just going to load CRPC 6. I'm going to make that one. Oops. I'm going to make that one even less. Actually, I'm going to show you something fun. I'm going to make that one a spider. And so what it's showing you is essentially the differences between Grackle 2006 and CRPC 6, which are almost identical. Some very subtle differences. So you could do two profiles and make one more opaque than the other and see if your two printers are close to each other. There's other tools out there, several $100 tools that you can do this with on your PC or your Mac. What's cool about this is, again, I think Chris charges like 10, 12 bucks, something like that. I don't even know. And you can do it right on your iPad or your phone. Or in my case, I can do it on both because I have the same iCloud account on both of these devices. I'm going to disconnect so we don't have problems with our next app. The last app we wanted to run through was Toolkit. So I am going, oh, that's right, Shelby, we decided we were going to do this. All right, give me a second here. Try and make it a little easier for you guys to see. I'm going to connect. I do that with, I'm not connected to my keyboard now. So I clicked on the Nix icon in the upper right, and that wants to know which device I'm using. I'm going to stay with the, I'll go back to the Spectro L. You can see it takes a little longer to connect. It gives you a little more diagnostic information. And that's why I said this is a really good program if you're having trouble connecting or getting solid measurements from something like Seeing Color or SpeckCheck. This is the place to go, and this app's a free download. If I put it in single scan mode, let's just measure this magenta. I get a whole bunch of information once it's done. I get my C-Lab data down there. I know it's small, but I get my C-Lab data, the hex and the RGB. And I do have the ability to tell it D50, D65, and all of those fun things that we teach you about if you come get color training from us. It also gives you a full spectral reflectance curve. And I did that simply by moving from left to right. There's little indicators there. I also just noticed for some reason, it looks like we're in M2. I'm going to change this to M0. That's just the measurement condition I prefer. I can do that. I can do a match. So if I want to know what magenta is in a paint company, I'll do a scan, and it will tell me that it's Tutti Frutti PPG Voice of Color. It's not a great match though. It's telling me there's no great matches to magenta. Let's pick something. Pick like a gray. I know paint companies do a lot of grays. There we go. So if I measured, this was a 50% 50% neutral gray, it would be Plain Possum from PPG Voice of Color, or Cloudy Slate, also from PPG Voice of Color. And if you click on that, it's going to give you more information about that particular color. So for those of you who work with paints, I think you can also purchase, I'm pretty sure you can purchase the Pantone library and have that be part of the Nix Toolkit. And I think it's like $100 a year or something like that. And then it's built right in. Quality control is one of my favorite features that they have. So what I can do as a G7 expert, I can say, give me a minute. I have to remember how to do this. I don't use it all the time. Plus, I don't want to save that session. I want to do a new session, and I want to scan my reference with the Nix device. So what I'm scanning is my 50% black patch on that. And then for my comparison, I'm going to scan my gray. So it's telling me that my 3-color gray, my CMY gray, is 2.2 delta E away from my 50% black. And that's honestly actually pretty good. That can be a hard color to hit consistently and accurately. But you can see this is a really cool tool because it will show me, again, I can go look at the spectral reflectance differences of those as well if I'm into that, if I'm a real color nerd. I am. So I can get that kind of data, and you can see it showing me the LAB and the LCH down at the bottom, plus virtualizations of the colors it just measured. So a whole bunch of different ways to look at this data. You can store, like I can go into my quality control history. Shelby and I were at a trade show. Some of you probably, anyone who was at the UV Energized, that's where most of these were created. What's kind of cool is I can go back in and I can compare my past measurements. And if I had named them better than just date and time samples, I would know what they were. And that's kind of a cool feature. Again, it's built in, it's free. Again, you can only get the comparison with the Spectro L or the Spectro 2. You can't do the comparison side by side with the Mini because the Mini just doesn't have enough horsepower. Remember, it only does those 3 curves instead of the 12 or 30 some. So my favorite colors, libraries, all that kind of stuff. It's all in there. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Try and stop sharing. All right, and I'm going to go back to sharing my desktop. Is that working, Shelby?
It is.
Okay. So we talking about some future training. You know, I threw some terms around, spectral reflectance, LAB. Those may be new terms to you, and if they are, one of the things you might want to consider is getting some additional color management training. One of the ways you can do that is to attend our upcoming Confident Color courses, which we're doing in conjunction with Mamaki, the first 2 anyway. And one of those is Thursday, January 18th, and that's going to be all day in basically Los Angeles. And then on Wednesday, March 6th, we're going to do the same thing in Irving, Texas. So basically Dallas, very, very close to DFW airport if you're trying to fly in. So if you're close to either of those, you know, maybe give that a consideration if you want to get a little more education in person. There won't be a true hands-on component, but there will be a demonstration portion, kind of like this, but way more in depth, where we demonstrate how to set spot colors inside a RIP, how to build profiles and things like that. You can also look at not Ideal Alliance, Printing United Alliance, iLearning Plus platform, which I'm going to show you in a moment. We're also doing some G7 expert in-person training. I am in February in Phoenix. Yeah, at the Muto facility. So if you are interested in really taking your color up a level, G7 Expert is pretty much it. That's as high as you can go. And I'll explain a little more about the difference between that and some of the other offerings when I get on the iLearning platform. And then there's always our Jim and Shelby Show podcast, which I mentioned earlier. We do that every couple of weeks, hopefully, sometimes not quite that frequently. And we covered all kinds of topics, and that's totally free. So you can jump on and watch us do things like this, but more specific. I mean, the last 2 episodes, one which should drop either later today or Monday, depending when our producer gets it done, are about Midjourney AI creative art creation. And so, you know, and the second one, which we're about to publish, is a really deep dive with an expert in the area. So we do those kinds of things. I think the last, okay. Let me jump out here.
And I actually missed a misspelling on that slide. Of course, you created the slides, but that's okay.
So it's my fault. That's fine.
I was so concerned with the small type, I didn't look at the big type. Opportunities was spelled wrong.
I have broad shoulders. Don't worry about it. Am I sharing or did I stop sharing? I stopped sharing, right?
Nope.
Yeah. Good. Let me get.
We do have a couple questions too when you're done.
Yep. I want to show my learning though.
I know.
I'm just getting it loaded up. I thought I had it open. when I was having issues earlier, I might have closed it. There it is. Plus, give that a second to get loaded up. That's probably big enough. Okay. Share that. All right, so iLearning Plus is just like it sounds, iLearning Plus, Plus spelled out, .org, and it's part of Printing United Alliance. So where you might want to start is in certifications. And if you look at color management professional.
Can you make that any bigger, Jim? It's really, really small. The window even. There you go.
So here, I can make it actually a little bigger than that. So here's Color Management Professional Fundamentals. This is a great place to start. You will notice that if you sign up for this, you'll get Ray and you'll get Shelby and you'll get Chuck and you'll get Amy Beth. I like the fact that that is a team teaching this, not one person just running through the whole thing. They all have different expertise in these disciplines, and as a result, you get a really broad understanding of color. And then the neat thing is it's a certification course. So you go through all the modules, and about 4.5 to 5 hours later, you can take a test. And once you take the test, you get a badge that looks like this that you can include in your email signature. Some of you may have seen it in Shelby's signature when she sent out reminders for this. So it's basically proof that you have a really good understanding of this material. We get no kickbacks on this, just so you know. Certification classes are 100%. We volunteer our time to help create them, and they are 100% part of the association. And I think I like that. A lot of people are like, why would you do it for free? It's like, well, because there shouldn't be any kickback on that, in my opinion. And then I did one for him, much more specific deep dive into wide format. So this is really, and there's a prerequisite of color management professional. It's not required, but I assume you've taken that course. So when you go through this course and you learn these 7 things, I assume that you have some base knowledge from the other course. And if you don't, you might lose quite a bit in translation. But again, you can take this as about 2 hours of work. You take the test and you get an additional badge. So you could have fundamentals and then wide format. Now, I'm going with that one just because I know about it, but you can see there's several different specializations you can do inside of color management professional. A whole bunch of these are new. So they've been spending a lot of time and effort to really build out this particular certification program so it has some real meaning. And then there's Brand Q is also available. The thing about this is there's other entire topic areas. So if we go into wide format, and again, I'm going to be a little self-serving. Shelby and I created wide format printing essentials. There's no certification that comes along with this. It's just, I don't know, how long was it, Shelby? Do you remember? 1.5 hours. So you get Shelby and I for 1.5 hours, and we will take you through really, I mean, it's a lot, right? I mean, we get into what is wide format, choosing the right equipment, pricing concerns, all kinds of issues. And so we cover everything as best as we can. And there's a whole bunch of topic areas you can see. I want to show you guys one more thing. So I mentioned G7 expert training. So basically, this is the granddaddy of them all. This is done both in person and online. They talk about the differences here, and this is the one that I'll be teaching if anyone wanted to come join us. This is not a small investment in time or money. We basically go for the better part of 3 full days. It's 20 hours, so it's basically 3 7-hour days, more or less. And we go through everything there is about color. Most importantly, though, the G7 or gray balance methodology. But there's so much more behind it. And you can see this is not a small investment. It's $2,150 if you're a member, $2,620 if you're not. But it's 3 full days. In this case, it's in person. We will be working with the Muto printers, and it's a real deep dive into color. So there's that. And And then I think the last thing we want to show you. I have a couple more slides, but I'm going to skip ahead so we don't have to come back in and out. So if you wanted to buy any additional Nix or other equipment that we have, but if you're speaking specifically about the Nixes, we have those all in this area right here. You can see we still have the Mini 2s available for $69. I'm going to create a coupon code for you guys. I just have to think what it's going to be. I think we already had a bunch of Mini 2 owners, though. I already have the Spectro 2 on sale for $849. That's normally a $999 device. I can get Spectro Ls. If someone's really interested in a Spectro L, email Shelby, which is Shelby at Colorcasters. You'll see that in a minute, or Jim at Colorcasters. I can get you firm pricing and we can get it put up in the store so you can pay for it. I just have that one right now. That's my demo unit. We just got SpeckCheck updated to support the Spectro L. So we haven't really added it yet, but if you're interested, I can take care of you. This is where you can get the app. The app, it shows $9.99. You don't have to pay for the app. It's free. We need to update that. Probably some of you saw this. This is the webinar. So this is where you can buy your Nix products right from us if you want to, and other things. And if you're interested in that Jim and Shelby show, we have its own tab, and you can see there's all kinds of different back episodes, and the fun ones are these when we do things at trade shows. So, all right. Enough of that. Let me share the presentation one more time. Oh, I guess I didn't need to actually close that, but give me 1 second. Let me just share this. Wrap this all up. Try and be respectful of your time. Our goal was to get this done in an hour, and it looks like we have just about succeeded. So here's that. There's where you can buy them. I covered that. And we are to the question and answer portion of the webinar. So I'm going to open the chat over here and look at it and see if.
So the first question we have is about delta E's. At what point does the difference become visible to the untrained eye? And that's something we do go over in those iLearning Plus, and the color, we'll do that with Confident Color. But you're right, there's a difference. And people ask, well, what's the delta E we should be trying to hit? Well, that depends. It depends on your customer. It depends on the job. 3 delta E might be good enough, and 5 delta E might be good enough. If you're not familiar with delta E, it is the mathematical difference between 2 swatches of colors. And if the number is smaller, that means those 2 swatches are closer together mathematically and visually using spectral data. So, we say, or we use in our training, that untrained eyes sometimes can't see the difference between 5 and 6 delta E, and trained eyes is more around the 2 or 3 mark.
And I see we have a question: how do you compare a printed swatch to a Pantone out of the Pantone book to see how far the delta E were away using the Nix Mini 2? So using the Mini 2, you could do it in SpeckCheck. So if you remember in SpeckCheck, one of the things I went through with library was after I took the measurement, I clicked on the plus sign at the bottom, and that allowed me to create a new measurement in my color library. So what you could do is take your Pantone book, measure the appropriate color in the Pantone book, and then click the plus sign and save that into your library, and then take your printed sample and measure that, and it should show you the closest matches. And once you see the match in the list, it will show you the delta E next to the LAB values.
I don't see any other questions, and we are 1 minute away from the hour. If you think of something and you didn't have a chance to ask during the webinar, feel free to email me at shelby@colorcasters.com, and we will get back to you. We're also going to let you know whether this recording was successful so that you can review it if need be.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate your time. And like Shelby said, we're right at the top of the hour, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we are going to end the webinar at this point.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome.